This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little bit more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. It's March 22nd, and on this night in 1989, Buffalo Sabres goalie Clint Malarchuk got slashed across the throat with a skate and thought he was going to die on the ice. The Sabres were playing at home in the Old Aud against the St. Louis Blues, and Malarchuk got the starting goal. He had not been with the Sabres very long, coming over in a trade on March 6th from the Washington Capitals. The Sabres needed some goaltending help after starter Darren Pupa was injured. Making just his sixth start with Buffalo on this night, he'd given up a power play goal to the Blues' Gaston Gingras midway through the first. Outside of that goal, though, Malarchuk remembers not really getting much action on his end. 5 minutes after the Blues scored, the puck got dumped into the corner, and a Blues player got to it first. Malarchuk took a look up ice and saw another Blues player, Steve Tuttle, was rushing the net a bit ahead of his defenseman, and anticipated a pass coming across to him. That pass was made. Malarchuk pushed hard to the opposite post, but Tuttle had been upended by the Sabre defenseman, and his skate was coming right at his throat. He felt Tuttle's skate hit his mask, but he didn't feel any pain. The skate cut a 6-inch gash on the right side of his throat. It took a moment before he saw the blood. Here's Malarchuk a week after the incident being interviewed between periods of a Sabres game.
I was very conscious through the whole thing, and I knew exactly what happened. The skate did come up, and I saw it coming. I tried to stretch out of the way, and it clipped me pretty good. And when I got down on my hands and knees, I checked first of all for blood, and then I saw it was squirting and with my heart sort of thing, and I knew it was a main artery, and I thought I was, didn't have much time left at that point.
In a blog post he wrote for the Players Tribune in 2018, he remembered his first two thoughts were, 1, get up. Nobody wants to see you lay on the ice like a weakling. And 2, he knew that his mom was watching on television back in his hometown of Calgary, and he did not want his mom to see him die on the ice. The trainer, a team doctor, emergency staff on hand at the arena, and several doctors in the crowd that night rushed to help. The pressure that he applied to his wound with his own hand to stifle the bleeding was credited a good bit for saving his own life. He never lost consciousness, and it took 300 stitches to close the wound. The game continued after the ice was cleaned as best as possible, with Jacques Cloutier taking over. St. Louis won the game 2-1. Malarchuk was back on the ice 11 days later, playing the final 5.5 minutes of the regular season finale against Quebec, and he played as the number 2 goalie in their playoff series with Boston. In the short term, he admitted he flinched when guys cut hard to the net in the first few games back, but when the off-season came around, it began to really hit him how serious the injury had been and how close he had come to dying. Malarchuk has been very open about his struggles with depression and paranoia. The nightmares that started up a few months after the injury haunted him. Outwardly, he put a brave face on and projected that all was fine. But inside, the truth was the exact opposite. There wasn't much in the way of mental health help offered to him, and he admits he probably would not have taken it if it was. His situation continued to snowball, and by 1992, he was out of hockey. He stayed around the game and coached in the minors and spent time with several NHL teams as a goaltending coach. But the nightmares continued, and his mental health continued to spiral downward. In February 2008, another Sabres goalie, Richard Zednik, suffered a similar injury on the ice. Malarchuk was forced to relive his own incident all over again as media outlets reached out to him to talk about Zednik's injury. The mental spiral continued, and it eventually led to a suicide attempt in October 2008. Malarchuk wrote a really powerful piece that details the injury, the aftermath, how he dealt and refused to deal with the mental pain from the injury that led to that point nearly 20 years later. And I put a link to that article in the show notes if you'd like to read it. Malarchuk has become a motivational speaker, discussing a variety of topics, and he released a book in 2015 titled A Matter of Inches: How I Survived in the Crease and Beyond. On this day in 1934, the first Masters got underway. The tournament was the idea of the most famous golfer in the world at the time, Bobby Jones. Jones, an Atlanta native, built Augusta National with the help of golf course architect Alistair Mackenzie. Jones's plan for Augusta National was to build the perfect golf course to play with friends away from the constant demand from fans for his attention. Horton Smith, Jimmy Hines, and Emmett French each shot 70 on this day to share the first round lead at 2 under par. Smith continued his steady play throughout the remaining 3 rounds to beat Craig Wood by a shot. Only 4 golfers were able to shoot under par for the tournament on Mackenzie's undulating greens. Smith would win the Masters again in 1936. But what about Jones? Well, he got off to a rough start on this day, shooting 76, with 36 of those strokes coming as putts. He finished 6 over for the tournament, 10 shots behind the winner. But at least Jones did not have a hole like John Daly did on this day in 1998. This was the final round of the Bay Hill Invitational in Orlando. Daly stepped up to the tee on the 543-yard par 5 6th hole. It's a dog-legged left with a lake running tee to green. The hole offers the temptation for the big hitters to try to bite off a large piece of that dog leg and clear the lake off the tee. Of course, that fits right in with the grip it and rip it mantra of Big John. Well, his tee shot hooked a lot more than he wanted, and it splashed well short of dry land. He then proceeded to the drop zone in front of the tee boxes, pulled a 3-wood out of the bag, and ripped another. That one came up short too and went kerploosh. Tin Cup, starring Kevin Costner and Don Johnson, had come out 2 years before. Maybe he was channeling his inner Roy McAvoy as he kept asking his caddy for ball after ball, and each one kersplashing and kerplunking in the drink. He hit 6 3-wood shots into the water. Finally, his 7th shot cleared it, but plugged into the hazard, so he had to take a drop and a 1-shot penalty. He hit his 15th with a 6-iron into a greenside bunker, blasted out, and 2-putted for an 18. His 18 strokes on this hole were 1 shy of the PGA record of 19 set back in 1938. Daly did not implode, though. He birdied the next hole to shoot a 49 on the front side, and he finished the day with an 85. After the round, Daly said, "I'm not going to worry about it. I didn't do anything wrong. I just got a hell of a lot of practice with that 3-wood." On this day in 1967, Muhammad Ali fought his final fight before his suspension. Ali stepped into the ring with Zora Foley and knew it was going to be his last one for a long time.
And after I finish Zora Foley, then we'll cross the other bridge as far as the draft is concerned when we get to it. But I have a very strange feeling. This is my last fight.
Ali had been the heavyweight champion since winning the title from Sonny Liston in '64, and he had defended it 7 times by this point. Ever since winning the title, Ali had joined the Nation of Islam, changed his name, and been a vocal proponent for civil rights. He'd expressed his opposition to the war in Vietnam and had been adamant that he would refuse the draft. It would be a little over a month from this point that he would officially refuse to stand for the draft. There wasn't much buzz around this fight. Public support for his stance against the war was not quite there yet, and Foley, a 7-1 underdog, did little to hype the fight on his side. He was as polite a contender as you might find, refusing to say anything negative towards Ali and calling him Muhammad Ali instead of Cassius Clay like many in the media did. The fight was held in Madison Square Garden, but there were plenty of seats still available by the time the bell rang to start the fight. Ali had a height advantage, a reach advantage, and he was the speedier boxer. With Foley content to counterpunch, Ali boxed only as much as he wanted to. The first 2 rounds were fairly mundane. He picked it up in the third, and then midway through the fourth, his right cross found its mark.
See how well the challenger rolls back from those punches? And there's Foley down! 5, 6, 7, 8. Foley is up at 9.
Foley bounced back up and seemed to have renewed energy after that knockdown, and he came right at Ali, stinging him a few times. But his jabs just weren't quick enough to catch Ali too often, and when they did land, they weren't doing much damage. The fight went into the 7th, with Ali winning on all cards, but it was time for this fight to be over.
We talked about Foley's courage. The champion has plenty himself, there's no question about that. Foley down from that right hand. I don't know if he's going to make this one. 6, 7, 8. He's not. Oh, he gamely tried to get up. And Muhammad Ali has retained his heavyweight championship of the world.
Foley said a few weeks later in an issue of Sports Illustrated, "The knockdown punch was so fast that I never saw it. He has lots of snap, and when the punches land, they dizzy your head. They fuzz up your mind. He's the trickiest fighter I've seen." A mix of boos and cheers greeted the official announcement of Ali's knockout win. And just as he had predicted in the lead-up, it was his final fight before his draft refusal and having his boxing license revoked for 3 years at the height of his boxing prowess. Women's basketball has never been as popular as it is right now, and it continues to grow. The WNBA is thriving, and with the addition of the 3-on-3 Unrivaled League, it's bringing in bunches of new fans. Well, that ties in with what happened on this day back in 1893, when the first women's collegiate game took place at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts. Now, this was not a game between 2 different colleges, but rather between a team of sophomores and a team of freshmen. The women played 2 15-minute halves, and the sophomores won 5-4, with each made basket counting as 1 point. But if you remember back to the December 21st edition of this dish, the game was rough then, with several players injured, and so it was in this first version of the women's game. One of the freshman women dislocated her shoulder, and her team had to play down a player the rest of the way. Men were not allowed in to watch this game at the all-women's college, but there was a throng of women watching from the running track above the court. The game was put together by Cinda Berenson, not quite 2 years after James Naismith introduced the game to students in Springfield, about 20 miles from Northampton. Berenson used a modified version of Naismith's rules for this game and is fairly unique in that the men's and women's versions of the sport grew mostly in parallel to each other. This game led to a contagion-like growth of the game at women's colleges, with the first intercollegiate game played just 3 years later between Cal and Stanford. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports Fun Fact. The Columbia Pictures logo, the one with a white-robed lady with a blue sash holding a torch on top of a pyramid of steps that you see at the beginning or end of a movie? Well, the model for the current image is a woman named Jenny Joseph. Joseph worked as a graphic artist at New Orleans Times-Picayune alongside Kathy Anderson, the photographer who'd been hired to shoot it. Joseph had never done any modeling prior to the shoot and has not done any since. And yet, it is one of the more iconic images in entertainment. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.